Donald Trump has been formally charged with falsifying his business records in a bid to hide damaging information during the 2016 presidential election. It makes Mr. Trump the first former president in US history to face criminal charges. You've aptly noted that for most people, facing criminal charges is something of a career setback. But for Donald Trump, to quote you, it's an opportunity. Can you help us understand why that may be so?
Help us understand Donald Trump.
How long have you got? How long have you got? Well, I've met Donald Trump, and it's much worse than you think.
So have a lot of other people who voted for him too.
Well, and these charges against him are going to help him get more people to vote for him. That's the problem. I mean, Donald Trump is a lucky man given his enemies, because his enemies sometimes play into his hands. And he has been charged on this with falsifying business records. But that isn't, in American terms, a felony. That's a misdemeanor. And it's already past the statute of limitations. If you're going to break the precedence of no American president ever being charged, you should have done it under something far tougher than this. Because the highly politicized courts, and America now has a highly politicized legal system. The district attorney who's taking on Mr. Trump campaigned on the issue that he would get him. He said he'd already sued him 100 times and campaigned to get that. So this is him trying to deliver. He has to prove something now very difficult, which is that this misdemeanor led to a felony, which was the corruption of the campaign laws. That is going to be really difficult to do, because as far as I can see, none of the campaign laws were broken, which is why I think Mr. Trump is a lucky guy in this regard. The moment this took place, he managed to raise $15 million for his campaign. He is, you know, for Mr. Trump, publicity is like oxygen for the rest of us. You know, he can't exist without it. And he's in his element now. He's on the front of every newspaper, every broadcast. Here we are, 16,000 miles from New York, and we're talking about it as well. If he was seeing it tonight...
Wall-to-wall coverage when he turned up in New York.
I think the mistake that was made was they went for the wrong charge. There are things that Mr. Trump needs to answer for in the courts. His attempt to strong-arm the Georgia authorities just to find another 12,000 votes that would have tipped Georgia over into his camp and therefore may have changed the result of the 2020 election. That seems to me far more important than putting a wrong entry into the business ledger.
So will he win in 2024?
There's two things that are happening here. One is that this will help him solidify the base, the Republican Party base. They're now rallying behind him again. Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, who's the only one that really has a chance of beating Mr. Trump in the Republican primaries, he's now looking like yesterday's man. He's looking a diminished figure. The money's going towards Mr. Trump.
And he'll be running against Joe Biden.
But then comes the general election. So even if Mr. Trump still wins the Republican nomination, it is not clear that he wins the general election. Mr. Biden has beaten him before. Mr. Trump's candidates in the midterm elections last year, in November 2022, all did very badly. The non-Trump Republicans did rather well. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. But what it means, I think, is very bad for the democratic world, very bad for those of us who depend on the United States, as Australia now does on foreign policy and defence, as Britain is a close ally too. Because what it means at a time when war is still raging in Ukraine, and Taiwan is now under daily pressure from military exercises by the Chinese Navy and amphibious forces. It means that the most important democracy in the world is going to face a choice of a 78-year-old narcissist facing criminal charges and an 82-year-old guy who's not quite sure what room he's in at times.
Kanishka, I want to bring... You can applaud.
No, Cole, more.
Yes, you can. Kanishka, what was the appeal to people of faith in Trump? Because particularly evangelicals flock to him. What is he speaking to?
Well, as a blogger friend of mine said recently, Mr. Trump is not the Messiah.
He's a very naughty boy.
Boom! Waiting for that one.
I was hoping you'd say that. I wasn't
It's the
going
way
to
you
say
just
it.
give me the out the park.
But there was an appeal, and there remains an appeal. Why do people of faith see in Donald Trump potentially a political messiah?
Look, I don't mind telling you, I find it difficult to understand. I think the demographic it includes people certainly who felt that America was failing them in some way. The idea of making America great again tapped into a fear that they had fallen from some state of grace, and that and their hopes became focused in a man who already had quite a high profile for other reasons, and in a sense is the quintessential success story. He's a wealthy, powerful man, and the sort of American milieu, to some extent.
His father was a millionaire. It was not a bad leg up. You know, it's not a rags to riches story.
No, but he represents that kind of, I guess, I'm speaking in very generalised terms, but that kind of American aspiration.
Well, it's a Barnum and Bailey story, isn't it? He's the tub-thumping entertainer, town to town, rallying the people. He
taps into the American psyche, to a particular group of people, and it's quite a large demographic. I mean, he got about 80 million votes in the 2020 election, more than he got in 2016, to those that feel the world has passed them by.
And has it to a degree? I mean, people are sitting there and seeing their factories closed down. If they've seen their children go off to fight endless wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, wouldn't they have a reason to look at Washington and feel betrayed?
Oh, I think that they did. I mean, America, in this century alone, America has spent $10 trillion, not billion, $10 trillion on wars that went nowhere. Whether it's Iraq or Afghanistan or other interventions. And, of course, it was the ordinary sons and daughters of American people who are going to fight these wars. And at the same time, they look around their own environment and they see steel mills going out of work, they see poverty, they see lack of opportunity. Then they see something else they don't like, which is different, which is that they see America is less of a white society, less of an Anglo-Saxon society, less of a WASP, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant society, and they don't like that. They don't like that change either. So all that came together, I think, it helped to produce Brexit, and it helped to produce Mr. Trump. Having seen what garners that kind of support, what you then do, of course, is an entirely different matter. There are plenty of policies you can have that don't involve tapping into hate or racism.
Yes, exactly.
And, you know, Mr. Trump is now dining with QAnon. I don't know if any of you have heard that, but, I mean, you know, if you think some people in this country are wacko, you haven't met QAnon, let me tell you. They are wacko squared. And he's been dining with sort of pro-Nazis as well. In fact, even so recently, which doesn't happen very often, he was dining with his wife, so maybe there's some hope in that. So this doesn't go away, this kind of populist sense that of a grievance and we're being left behind, and this is the strong man. I mean, the best way to think of him is a Latin American general. He's a caudillo, caudillo. He's a strong man in that. I don't think he'll get a second chance. But then, as I told him when I saw him, I said to him, don't run for president. This was way back in late 2015. I said, don't run for president. You haven't got a chance.